Welcome back, folks. My name is LastKnownMeal, and today we're going to be talking about Cyberpunk Edgerunners. This is going to be my spoilery review of the entire season, so if you haven't watched the actual show, I do not recommend watching this video because I will be going into heavy spoilers from the ending of the show and basically through the entire season itself, so you have been warned. Now, as I said in my non-spoilery review of the show, I was really happy with how the anime was done, and I thoroughly enjoyed, the entire 10 episode special because, as I said, I'm not a huge fan of anime. I mean, I watch anime, I like anime, but I'm not someone who is going to follow every single anime which comes out, and especially when it comes to style of an anime, I am very picky because I like the older style of animation, Akira, Spirited Away, that sort of stuff. So when they showed this, when they showed the first trailer, I was like, all right, this is looking like the 90s, there is some inspiration around it, but it's not entirely 90s. It has some of that modern, trigger style in it. And it worked perfectly. Like, first off, David as a character. So one of the biggest turning points for him as a character was the death of his mother, and that's when he got, into Sadnevistan and all of that. And when he actually got Sandevistan, I was like, okay, this is not going to end well, because Cyberpunk as a subgenre, especially Cyberpunk 2020, which was written by Mike Pondsmith, is a very dangerous world, meaning that majority of main characters die out and there are no happy endings in this universe, and that's something which kind of stayed with the anime itself for the end, but we're gonna talk about that soon. So when David got this Sandevistan, I was like, okay, you're gonna go into a lot of trouble because of this cyberware, because in the world itself, not really similar to Cyberpunk 2077 the game, having cyberware is a big thing because cyberware is expensive and majority of people who live in Night City are not that rich. So military grade cyberware in a normal tomb, that's a very big thing. And then you saw David use that cyberware and how it actually took a toll on his body, and basically was said, you cannot be a cyber psycho with just one implant. Yes, you can, especially if you push your body to certain limits. And you've seen that the more David uses Sandevistan, the more it actually takes a mental toll on him, and you can see the blood, running from his nose and all of that. And then when he actually met Lucy in episode 2, that was kind of a turning point from him, because I believe that before he met Lucy, David was kind of lost as a character. He didn't know what to do. You can actually saw him roaming around Night City, not doing anything, jumping from high, ceilings to just, I don't know, maybe get an adrenaline rush or something like that. But when he met Lucy, that's what's changed. And Lucy as a character is really good. I know the creators from Trigger actually talked about, we want to make a female character set in Cyberpunk, but we don't want this character to be Motoko Kusanagi, because when you think about, okay, female Cyberpunk character Motoko Kusanagi, so you want to move away from that. I think they did a nice job. And Lucy as somewhat of a netrunner is absolutely amazing as a character, especially at the beginning when you see her stealing. That's something you're going to have hackers do, especially on the street level of Cyberpunk. You're going to have people just basically hacking you and taking money from you. So to have her was a nice introduction. And then you have this scene where they start working together, and you have this scene on the moon, which I think was done phenomenally well with the music and everything behind it. It was such a nice moment for David, because I believe that's when he saw okay, maybe my life can be something bigger than it was prior to this. And that's when this whole chemistry between them started. And I really liked at the end of that scene when they cut and basically you have Main pointing a gun and him saying oh, you took my chrome, blah blah blah. I was like, oh, you got double crossed again. And even then, Lucy, I think kind of grew up with him a little bit, grew close to him, where even when Main probably wanted to say oh, do we want to just give him to the scavengers so we can dismantle him, and she was like, no, he cannot die in this situation. So that's when she grew a little bit of a fondness towards him. And when it comes to the group itself, having Rebecca, Dorio, you had Kiwi, you have Main, all of those characters were straight up from Cyberpunk. Even Rebecca, which is an original creation from Trigger, there was this huge discussion if they're going to have her. I mean, just to clarify that, I mean, Rafal, the creator of the show, actually talked about it, and he said they were not against Rebecca as a character, they were against original characters from Trigger. But when they saw the design of Rebecca and when Trigger explained Rebecca, that's when, you know, they said, all right, we're definitely gonna have Rebecca as a character in the anime itself. And especially having it 100%, you know, canon to the game and to that universe is amazing, because the sounds, the way hacking is done, the way phone calls are done, all of that from the game itself, those same sounds just creates this synthesis where you feel like, all right, David was walking here if you're playing the game, like David was here, because same locations, same everything. I think that gives you a new perspective into everything and makes everything just look amazing. But of course, all of the good things have to come to an end, especially because prior to this anime coming out, and when people like saw the David Martinez you know, drink in Afterlife, I was like, oh, this is going to be extremely bad, because you only get a drink in Afterlife if you die with a bang. The bar is called Afterlife. It was logical that David is going to die, and that was a little bit problematic for me, because I was like, okay, so we know the premise of the story, we know that David is going to die in the end. This is kinda bad to have, you know, because you're already going to see the end. But I was happy because the ending itself, I was like, okay, I know David is going to die, but I was like, how is David going to die? And the first moment, I'm not kidding you, the first moment they show Adam Smasher, I was like, oh boy, this is not going to end well. Whenever that happened, I was like, alright, they're going to be wiped out. And that moment with Rebecca actually dying, oh my god, when she put up a shotgun up there and I saw him jumping from there, I was like, yeah, she's dead. She is absolutely 100% dead. You don't go head to head with Adam Smasher, because, as I said, on the power level, the entire group they had, going from David to Lucy to Rebecca to Dorio to Kiwi to Main to everyone, all of them are strong, but they are not Adam Smasher strong. Absolutely not. And even all of them combined, I believe they would not be able to defeat him like 5-6 on 1. It was impossible. Now, to go back a little bit to David and Lucy and everything happening there, one thing I also liked, some people didn't like it, but I enjoyed it, is that they somehow mixed like side gigs with the main story. And I talked with some people around it, they were like, maybe like the main plot should have been in your face a little bit more. Maybe, but at the same time, I really enjoyed that they actually revisited a lot of stuff from the lore, you know, going with scavengers, you know, going into the Badlands a little bit and all of that. I think from that perspective, I really enjoyed it because it captured the world around it, you know. It was rushed because you have 10 episodes, each episode is like, what, 20 minutes without intro and outro, so you don't have a lot of time to work with the story. But I believe that even with what they had to do and the story they said, you know, in 10 episodes, I think it was alright. Maybe I would extend it to like 13 episodes or something like that, but at the same time, producing anime, especially if you don't know how popular that anime is going to be, costs a lot of money. And for CD Projekt Red, you have to keep one thing in mind. For CD Projekt Red, this entire anime was basically a marketing tool, so they can market, you know, the franchise and Cyberpunk 2077, obviously very successfully, and they poured, as you can see from the animation, a lot of money into it, which is definitely a huge plus. Now, one thing which was funny is the Ripper Doc as well. I really enjoyed the Ripper Doc, the David's one. That was cool because you just have different types of Ripper Doctors, and he was one of the crazier ones, which is really cool. There was a few things which were funny though, like for example, at the end of, like, as you're going near the end of the show, you have David put on more and more chrome onto him, and then at this point you have David sitting there and he's like really big, he's like this, he's like a big chungus, you know, sitting there like a Giga Chad. And I was like, okay dude, but they had to do it that way for a few reasons. Number one, so you can actually see the power difference in anime, because how do you then differentiate the powers? Because he doesn't have special powers, he's not gonna be able to conjure magic, so the only way you can justify his new strength is if he gets more chrome and he gets bigger. And second of all, from the lore perspective, it's completely normal for you to do body sculpting and be that big. You can be that big. Obviously not in Cyberpunk 2077, which is kind of sad that you cannot be that big. But you know, from the lore perspective, 100% true, because yeah, you can be a scrawny little guy or you can be a huge dude. Quite normal. And now, especially going to like episode 6, it was, I think for me, it was probably my favorite episode. Maybe even like, maybe episode 4 was also amazing for me, but episode 6 was definitely that turning point in anime when everything went with Main and then he basically shot Dorio. That was, I was like, oh boy, it's gonna be one of those, because I was like thinking which one of the characters is going to survive here, because I'm like, okay, I know David is not going to survive. I mean, it's like one thing I saw, like I knew Lucy was going to somewhat survive, because she is that sort of a character which you kind of keep alive in like in the screenplay. But everyone else, I was like, are they going to survive? And then when everything happened with Main in episode 6, I was like, oh, they're not going to survive. And I was kind of right. By the end of the show, none of them almost survived. And Faraday also as a character was amazing, you know, corpo fixer, 3 eyes, all of that. That was cool. I mean, his death was when he falls down, when they basically like push him off of that, when that explosion happened, he just splats on the floor and you then have eyes, you know, just on the side. That was kind of that was kind of funny, but he as a character absolutely nailed it, because the fixers just do that. Fixer, having any contact with a fixer in this world is not, in like 90% cases, is not going to end well for you. Even rogue situation, like that's always a little bit iffy. But yeah, I mean, Faraday was great. You had Giancarlo Esposito actually play him in the English dub, but I'm gonna be honest, I haven't watched the English dub until the end. I just saw the first 3 episodes. Everything else I watched in Japanese, because I just watch anime in Japanese. I cannot watch it in any other language. I cannot immerse myself in it if it's not in Japanese. I don't know why. But yeah, that's just what I think about it. I mean, every single character was absolutely great, but they just couldn't. They got way over their head, and when Adam Smasher arrived, it was basically the end. And I wouldn't be surprised if they did that with Adam Smasher, just because they can attract more people to play the game, because you're like, this, I'm gonna kill him, and then you're like, well, you can kill him in Cyberpunk 2077. They're like, alright, I'm gonna go and buy this. So it could be that. I mean, it's just, but even without it, I mean, the story is great. And one of the sad things is that this could have been like a multi-season anime. Like if they had like David's adventures and everything happen like between like 3 seasons, where you have this arc of him becoming bigger and bigger and bigger, and stronger obviously, and more insane, you know, with him going cyber psycho at the end. I mean, it's a very thin line. It's a very thin line that all characters actually follow in the universe in general. And from the lore perspective, the amount of time he was using cyberware, the death that he had, and especially in the end where the cyber psychosis wore off and there was a smile on his face, there wasn't a different way for him to go out. But if anything, he went out with a true cyberpunk style, out with the bang, and he absolutely deserved to have a drink in Afterlife named after him. Non-carbonated, of course. But thank you so much for watching. Tell me down below, what do you think about all of this? I will be going more into detail about Easter eggs and everything. The problem is, right now, it's impossible to post any footage from Netflix, because that means deletion of the channel, so I have to wait a little bit before I can post some of that footage from Netflix and so on. But we'll get to that very soon, as like the show has been out for a few more days. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like and subscribe for more, and also check us out on Twitter and Discord. And huge thanks to my current Patreon supporters. And if you want to support the channel in an extra way, I do have a Patreon page. This is LKM signing out. Stay classy everyone, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.
Even when you feel low, you can still go. Even when you feel slow, you can still go. Even when there's no hope, you can still go. I never answer to no, man, I still go. Go, go.